Previously on Startup, 7 finalists survived brutal cuts to launch Season 4 of Channel News Asia's Startup. Last week, the startups faced their first hurdle, a lift ride they'd never forget.
Are we all unanimous, judges?
Yes. I agree.
We have a winner.
This week, the startups need to take their business to the marketplace and convince a veteran from their respective industries that they have what it takes to succeed. It's the second challenge of the competition, and one team will be sent home today. Every startup dreams of having the next big idea, of becoming a unicorn, of making that perfect exit. But 9 out of 10 startups fail before they're anywhere close. Against the odds, 7 startups from around the world compete in a challenge of their lifetime. To clinch a deal from 3 top venture capitalists, who will emerge victorious? This is Startup Season 4.
Guys, great to see you. Well rested? Yep, and ready to go? We've got a big challenge coming up. It's your second major challenge, and remember, your goal is to convince an industry veteran from your respective industries that you have a viable business model. So you have exactly 2 minutes to make a presentation. That'll be followed by 5 minutes of Q&A. And remember, at the end of today, one of you is going home. So guys, give it your best shot, okay? Good luck.
Our industry veteran is going to be Greg Bittman, who is the Vice President at MyRepublic in Singapore.
He's an industry guy, basically from the telecom industry. So we're looking forward to meet up with him. I think he carries definitely a long wealth of experience in the telecom industry, and we do look forward to learning from him.
I've seen your slide deck. I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, and to be honest, it reminds me a lot of when we started 5 years ago. And can I ask, so the upstream wholesale arrangements that you have with carriers all around the world, could you describe that a little bit?
So we actually work both direct and indirect with upstream carriers around the world. So we do have direct relationships with several carriers, primarily in Europe, in Asia at this point of time, but we also go through other third-party vendors that actually has got established business in terms of managing carriers.
And you mentioned that you have revenue right now. Who is that? Who are your customer base?
Our perspective is that to address the B2B market first, because we see the B2B market being able to give us the much needed traction that we need to go to market. So from this phase itself, based on the technology, one of the things is actually a global roaming Wi-Fi that allows us to deliver SIM cards over the air to the device. So this is actually being taken up, in fact, very well taken up by those telecom value-added service providers that does rental of devices to allow users to travel around the world. In fact, from a traction perspective, over the last 3 months, we have achieved close to about $300,000 of traction, and basically we are pre-booked at close to about $4 million just over the last couple of months.
What do you say to those that say the roaming segment is it's an arbitrage opportunity? In other words, there's a difference in price between local rates and then the price that inbound roamers pay. How do you respond to that?
Apart from being a roaming player itself, we are basically a solution that wants to manage the SIM management in terms of how we push the device. Addressing the roaming thing, the roaming possibilities is that we see basically the local rates and the IoT rates between operator to operator still at a very big differential. In fact, we're looking at like a 10x to 20x type of differential between the local operator and the operator to operator charge. So this is where we see that's a position today that we can potentially play.
As the startups go all out to impress the industry veterans, what they don't know is that our judges are closely watching their every move in the room next door.
What I don't like about SimGo is they really have 2 parts to their business. The first part is this whole idea of roaming, helping roaming be made easier and helping it more economic for the consumer. Now, on its face, that's a very, very good thing. That's a real problem that people have, the whole bill shock problem. The problem is that it's such a big opportunity that operators themselves, who have been largely responsible for that arbitrage opportunity, it's been so egregious for so long that it's starting to close. The part that I love about their business is this whole idea of where they will inevitably transform to. And it's this whole idea that they will become what's known as an IoT or M2M MVNO or some sort of network integrator that helps with the transition of having connectivity deployed across their organization, across their businesses, across devices.
I've actually seen your presentation. Just get to the main part.
We have patented the technology in Singapore and currently filed a patent in the US as well. So we actually aim to distribute this device through hospitals and retailers onto the hands of patients. And we are looking into the initial market, which is China.
I'd like to understand a bit more. How would you actually convince a doctor, and who's going to actually distribute your product? What's the commercial model?
There's actually two reasons why we actually choose China. So the first one I've mentioned is there's a vast potential. The second one, we actually have an interested investor, which is also a collaborator that we are working towards closely with. She's actually a majority shareholder in a listed company in Singapore, medical company, and she has a reach of 1,000 over hospitals in China.
Reaching out to Chinese hospitals is like reaching the moon. I would like to know a bit more about China, because that's a big risk as well. I mean, if you take Singapore and then go to Australia, then you go to Taiwan, Hong Kong, it's better than kind of directly landing in China.
I have been talking very much to our collaborator. The first thing that I need to do is actually to create a Chinese company in China. We have to establish as a Chinese company. In fact, we have to HQ in China. The second hurdle that we are looking into is actually to clear the CFDA, China FDA.
Being in the healthcare industry, I know that such products are really blockbusters. So from a product standpoint, I think it's well thought through. They have good clinical guidance. My concerns obviously are around their go-to-market strategy. They're looking at China, which is a beast.
Next up, Covatella. Despite winning immunity from last week's Lift Challenge, the pair is not letting their guard down.
So our veteran's going to be Daniel Lim of Rubens. I actually forgot I had immunity when I was preparing, because I think every opportunity, especially in front of the judges, but also in front of a person like Daniel, who I want to collaborate with and possibly have as an advisor, I want to impress.
Can I just understand, so 3 business models, right? One is you owning your own inventory. Sounds actually very familiar. Yeah. Second one, obviously, is a merchant's kind of marketplace where you can list your items, or merchants can list their items. And thirdly,
Individuals.
CTC. Okay, but what's the percentage breakdown between the 3 right now in terms of revenue?
In terms of revenue or in terms of inventory?
Well, maybe inventory first and then after that.
Right, yeah. Okay. So inventory, it's about 50% we own.
Okay.
And then actually 25% individuals and then 25% merchants.
And what is the kind of, I guess, revenue model? Is it a subscription monthly basis or per item? How does that work?
Right now we just take a percentage cut.
Okay.
So it ranges between 30 to 60% of how much we take.
Okay.
So if the merchants are able to deal with their own delivery and dry cleaning, then we take a much smaller cut. If it's, say, a merchant that's never rented before or an individual, then we actually do end-to-end full-service white glove for them, and then we take a higher percentage.
Okay, and on the customer side, I mean, how would you charge them? Is it a subscription kind of model, or?
Oh no, it's just by dress or by item.
Okay, and how much would that be in terms of?
So usually traditional rental models price their items about 15 to 20% of the retail price.
Right, okay.
So if a bag retails or a dress retails at 1,000, then we'll rent it for about 200.
I mean, the rental business has been around for a while. I think one of the questions I asked them really was, have you seen it scale? Because I think there's only been maybe one company in the US that has, scaled the business successfully. But they have a very big domestic market, right? So I think, launching here in Singapore, maybe smaller market, could they scale it in Singapore? And then after that, cross-border, that was something that I was a bit concerned about. But I was happy that they actually pivoted towards a marketplace model. So they had customers consigning to them, as well as merchants coming on board. And I think they said that they see that as the future, and they will focus more on that. So I think that's a good move.
Coming up, tensions run high as the startups face a make or break moment with industry veterans.
When you say average spend, what is that? Per person or per day? How do you get
So
it to
that's per
365?
transaction.
Why would the carriers and the 4PLs want to hand their data to you?
Anxiety fills the air as one startup after another faces an intense scrutiny. So far, Simgo, Avis Health, and Covatella have made their presentations, and 4 more are waiting for their turn. After running successful businesses in Europe, reverse logistics platform founder Max is determined to make a splash in Asia with Pickback.
An end-to-end solution built as a platform, we never saw one. And we know that this South Asian market is growing very fast. So we thought it was a good area where we should launch our project.
Max's strong software background and co-founder Juan's exposure to Asian markets were the perfect combination to get Pickback off the ground.
What I created in France is the first night restaurant food delivery company. I sold my company 6 years ago, and I created a logistic company for restaurants.
Business started to boom at Max's newly set up logistics firm. More than 40 restaurants signed on and about 150,000 deliveries were made annually. That's when Max got its next big break.
And finally, a big group of food delivery in Europe, actually the biggest in the world, came to me and asked me to be in charge of the delivery solutions they wanted to create. So I did it for the last 2 years, and on the side, I created my tech company.
I saw that you presented in your slides was a very generic business model for reverse logistics. Besides mobile applications and website, what is the business model for internal partners pickup and ground logistics?
If you see us as an end-to-end solution and as a platform, it means either we can internal all the process, or we can work with actors who are already on the market. The fact that working with actual actors means that we will be able to have a lot of volume and work on the prices. And our business model will be a percentage of this amount of cash they're making.
The whole reverse logistics and returns that you're doing right now through your company, Pickback, leverages a lot on quality of service. How do you propose to maintain a high level of quality of service? What would you do?
Tech is the key. This is also why we want to start here in Singapore, because Singapore is known to be a small market, but with high potential of persons who are involved in tech, and it's known for that. I think it's all about question of education on metrics. I'm focused on KPI. This is how I work.
There is a need basically for the company Pickback to understand the whole reverse logistics segment a little bit better, and then to also look at what are they specifically focused on. You can't boil the ocean. So when you look at the categories you're dealing with in here, what categories are they going to be really good at, and what are the categories probably they want to avoid? I read the PowerPoint presentation, and I also realized that you did a launch back in October. First question is, how's it going?
So we are 2 weeks away from our launch of the service, and we're preparing for a self-sign-on service that we make available for all merchants. We have been working on a beta version of the service, and we're getting very good feedback. Now we want to make it available to all customers.
So would you consider yourself to be a disruptor or perhaps an alternative industry service provider focused on e-commerce space?
I think we're rather an enhancer, so we can't change the industry, but we can make it a lot better and help the merchants to grow. So that's where we saw the lack of merchants. They want to grow and scale up their service, but they can't figure out the logistics, and that's how we want to facilitate.
So Parcel Perform really requires you to have access to data. Data availability, data access, data accuracy, and precision is actually going to be very key to the success of your business. And why would the carriers and the 4PLs want to hand their data to you, which is sensitive in nature? Why would this data be made available to you?
The data is actually public knowledge because the data is made available to the customers of the carriers. Yeah. So they get their tracking updates, and we are just obtaining this data on behalf of the merchants that we serve with Parcel Perform. So therefore, we're taking the information that is available and making best use of it, and helping the merchants to better understand what's happening in their supply chain.
One of the things that this company stood out for me is essentially that they have got a business model right now. Firstly, it's simple. Secondly, is that they answered about the access to data in here is public data, and what they're doing is that they're consolidating the data right now, massaging it, and then putting into an analytics platform in here that the end users can benefit from it. The challenge for them is that at some point, they have to move beyond the public data in here, more towards the private data, and that's when the real value comes in.
Our industry veteran is Michael Ma from the Industry Group. He's obviously very well known in the industry for being a very dynamic, very engaging businessman. So there's a lot of things about him that we would like to, learn from and emulate.
I think people always spend a lot of time fussing about the little details when it comes to an event. So it could be finding a new event experience to show to your guests, or even hiring the right vendors. So what we're actually aiming to do is actually to solve this problem by being the quickest and smartest way for anyone to discover and to hire event vendors.
When you say average spend, what is that? Per person or per day? How do you get
So
to
that's per
365?
transaction. So basically, it depends on the average check that goes through, and we take a cut of around 10% of the platform. And so you can estimate that the ticket size, I mean, let's say it's a venue space, it's much higher than maybe a photographer. But the average spend that we earn as commissions is 365.
Per event?
Per vendor confirmation. Per vendor hired through the platform.
So with each event on our platform, they actually hire multiple vendors as well. So that's what Delegate is so great at. We firstly focus on this market size for this particular event segment because there's a lot of repeat rate. And on top of that, they actually make multiple bookings each time they plan an event.
I think there's a gap for the market. It can be disruptive because in this space of event organization, there's a lot of companies that have limited budgets. It's a venue that that can bring a lot of small, medium enterprise. You know, they want to do something professional, but yet might not have the time. They're not in the game, whereas these guys are in the game. The revenue model is good because they will get 10% cut and off all the other suppliers in the chain.
Coming up, 6 down, 1 more to go. It's time for Amazing to bring their A game.
So what is your differentiation between what, for example, even LoopPay is doing, which is MTS-based, versus WeChat is doing versus what you guys are doing? What's your differentiation? How are you solving the problem differently?
Plus, Leslie, can you tell us which startup is going home and why?
So the industry veteran for Amazing is Mr. Anupam from the DMD of PayPal India. As we are still a very early stage startup, truthfully we don't have much track records to impress him, but we want to talk to him with humility.
First question that comes to my mind, are you a technology company? Are you a financial services company? Are you a security company? You've talked about door locks, you've talked about financial payments. They're two very separate things. So who do you want to be?
I think we are very much more like a technology company. So we provide like a SDK to enable transactions to be done with this technology.
First of all, I think that's key to really understand which market you're in, right? And because every market is so different. You cannot be a financial services company and be a security company. So while you can be a technology company, you can be a Cisco, for example, that provides routers for any company that wants to use routers. That's a very sort of hardware play, right? Agnostic to any market vertical. Is that the route you want to take? Just be agnostic to any particular vertical and just sell your... So are you a software player or a hardware play?
Software player.
Software play.
We are software player.
Okay. So then if you're a software play, then you want to just provide your software to anybody in the world, whoever wants to buy it, or to a particular market segment? I mean, that's a question you have to answer, right? I mean, because the laws and regulations, for example, in a financial services play are extremely, extremely stringent, right? Who can develop, you have to have things like PCI compliance and so on and so forth, right? So not anybody can just make any software and say, hey, now you take it. So figure that piece out. That would be my advice to you as a first step. Secondly, I think in terms of the technology that you're building, I know there are other companies that have done sound, like WeChat, for example, is using the white space sound wave to transmit data back and forth. So what is your differentiation between what, for example, even LoopPay is doing, which is MTS-based, versus what WeChat is doing versus what you guys are doing? What's your differentiation? How are you solving the problem differently?
So we focus on is Southeast Asia, but we doing a research, we found that is not a SDK or technology provide this service in Southeast Asia. But like WeChat, they have this technology, but they just use their own product.
I think for any startup, right, focus is, I think, a key importance. you cannot try to please everybody. You end up pleasing nobody. So you have to figure out what do you want to be when you grow up, so to speak, and focus your energies on one or two things. And I think two things is way too many, right? So are you a financial technology player? Are you a pure technology player? And if so, then which segment are you going after? The second aspect of it is if they want to be in the financial services segment, or even if they want to be in the operating system, is what they called it, or SDK segment, they need to augment their team with somebody who is an expert in that area.
Guys, great to see you. You've had a long and strenuous day. I think, first of all, you really deserve a whole round of applause. Job well done. All right, now it is time to get down to business. You faced your second major challenge. It was about drilling down into the specifics of your business model. And before we announce who is going to go home, there is something that you need to know. All right. While you were getting grilled by your industry veterans, the judges were right next door watching and hearing every single little thing. Kwon, you saw this literally firsthand, behind the scenes. How did the startups fare? Give us your overall perspective.
This challenge was actually designed to be a pressure cooker of sorts. You were speaking in front of seasoned industry veterans who probably knows more than a thing or two about the industries of which you're trying to disrupt. And the three of us came to the conclusion that the one thing that everyone could probably work harder on is the details. By communicating the details across in an effective way is probably one of the biggest things you can do to convince the industry experts that you know what you're doing.
Now, Leslie, can you tell us which startup is going home and why?
The industry veterans want to know your value proposition, but more importantly, they want to find out about your business, particularly if it's scalable. This particular startup, I'm afraid that they focus way too much on technology, but not on the business as a whole. This startup is Pickpack.
You have to work harder on customer segmentation and also your category, in the product category that you're working on. Two, your operational and unit economics needs to be more detailed so that you know and your founders know that it's a worthwhile business to work on. And finally, I think we are here all to wish you the best when you launch. So please make the first 5 customers as happy as possible, and we are rooting for you.
I'm very pleased from this experience, and it will give us more energy for the future and to see more VCs. And so thank you very much for the experience.